Napoleon was like Alexander the Great in English, and he was one of the best military leaders who ever lived. He also had a wild sexual life. He gave up his virginity in a brothel in Paris. He learned how to make love from his first wife, Joséphine. Napoleon got married twice. Napoleon said he had 7 lovers, but it's more likely that he had at least 21. Napoleon was not only short, but his was also small. Among Napoleon's lovers was a famous French actress who had sex with both Napoleon and Duke Wellington, who was his worst enemy. It turned out that Duke Wellington was much better in bed. He had 2 kids with 2 different women after marrying the Austrian princess Marie-Louise on April 1st, 1810. They were born 1 day apart. Alex was born on May 4th, 1810, to his Polish lover, Marie Walewska. His Austrian lover, Emily Kraus, gave birth to his son Eugen on May 3rd, 1810, 1 day before he did. Napoleon often said that Joséphine was the only woman he had ever really loved. France, the army, head of the army, Joséphine. Napoleon's last words. Napoleon is best known for defeating armies, but he also liked beating women, as many other male rulers have done throughout history. A woman laughing is a woman conquered. Napoleon said, "I take women and forget them," because power made him feel good. He never forgot about the people he loved or had sex with, though. He worked hard to make sure they had a good life. Napoleon's first love, Caroline Colombia. In the year 1786, just after he had graduated from a military institution, Napoleon was stationed in the town of Valence. It was during this time that he had a relationship with Caroline Colombia. Napoleon and Caroline were in love despite the fact that they never had sexual relations. While she was 25 years old, he was only 17 years old. After 20 years had passed since Caroline had sought Napoleon for a favor, he lavished her and her family with presents all throughout the years. "We could not have been more innocent than we. We made small appointments. I still remember one in the middle of summer, at daybreak. We will believe it with difficulty. All our happiness was reduced to eating cherries together." Napoleon about his first love. Napoleon's first sexual experience. Around the year 1795, Napoleon embarked on his first sexual encounter. A prostitute in a Paris brothel was responsible for him losing his virginity. In point of fact, he was only successful when he attempted to do so with the 4th prostitute, supposedly in order to get experience in real life that he might use in the love novel that he was writing. Clisson and Eugenie was the name of the book, in case you were curious about its title. Napoleon's fiancée was a future queen of Sweden, Desirée Clary. In the case of Desirée Clary, her sister Julie married Joseph Bonaparte, who was Napoleon's older brother. Later on, Napoleon developed feelings for Desirée, and the two of them eventually were engaged. Not only did Desirée have little interest in Napoleon, but her relatives did as well, and they were resentful of the fact that there were 2 Bonapartes in the family. In 1795, Napoleon broke off the engagement when he had a romantic encounter with the femme fatale, Joséphine de Beauharnais. On a later date, Desirée tied the knot with Jean-Baptiste Jules Bernadotte, a general under Napoleon's command who went on to become the King of Sweden and a formidable adversary of Napoleon. Desirée was a pawn in the machinations that Bernadotte and Napoleon were perpetrating against one another, and she also acted as a messenger between these 2 powerful men. Napoleon's true love and his first wife was Joséphine de Beauharnais. The only woman that Napoleon loved deeply was Joséphine de Beauharnais, who was his only true love. In 1795, they happened to meet at a ball that was thrown by Paul Barras, who was Joséphine's lover. Joséphine possessed an alluring, irresistible charm. Aside from her exotic appearance and graceful demeanor, she was notorious for her ability to make love. During sexual activity, for instance, she adorned her bedroom with a multitude of mirrors in order to give the impression that she was orgy. It was well known that Joséphine would execute a dance known as zigzags when she was in bed, yet nobody is certain what exactly this dance was. It was Joséphine who was responsible for the creation of a sexually assured Napoleon. Performing cunnilingus on Joséphine was a favorite activity of Napoleon. "I am coming home. Don't wash." Napoleon to Joséphine. In spite of the fact that Joséphine's family disapproved of their marriage, young Napoleon was infatuated with her. and they tied the knot in the year 1796. In the course of their wedding night, Napoleon came to the realization that he was required to share a bed with Josephine's dog, who was extremely guardian. During the time when Napoleon was having sexual relations with Joséphine, the dog nipped him in the leg. After the wedding, Napoleon traveled to battle in Italy, which was only 2 days after the wedding. Almost quickly, Joséphine was able to find a boyfriend in the form of a gorgeous officer named Hippolyte Charles. Joséphine was the recipient of Napoleon's ardent letters, although she rarely responded to them. "How happy I would be if I could assist you at your undressing, the little firm white breast, the adorable face, the hair tied up in a scarf à la Creole." Napoleon to Joséphine. His letters were imbued with love and feelings, whilst hers were dry and uninteresting. In addition to that, she read his letters to her group of friends in a mocking manner. "Oh, you know that I will never forget the little visits. You know, the little black forest. I kiss it 1,000 times and wait impatiently for the moment I will be in it." Napoleon to Joséphine. It seemed as though Napoleon was constantly kissing the portrait of Joséphine. She didn't even bother to look at his image. A kiss on your heart, and one much lower down, much lower. Napoleon to Joséphine. During her trip to Italy to see Napoleon, Joséphine brought her boyfriend Hippolyte along with her. Because Napoleon was so utterly enamored with Joséphine, he failed to recognize that she was having an affair. As soon as Joséphine arrived back in Paris, she began to have sexual relations with Hippolyte. Napoleon had revenge sex. On the other hand, 2 years later, during the Egyptian campaign, 1798 to 1801, Napoleon's brother informed him about Joséphine's affair, and this time Napoleon believed what he was hearing. "I don't love you, not at all. On the contrary, I detest you. You're a naughty, gawky, foolish." Napoleon to Joséphine. Unfortunately, the British were able to intercept the love letter and publish it in public in order to embarrass Napoleon. It wasn't long before he started having an affair with Pauline Fourès, who was married to one of his lieutenants. He had sexual retribution. Pauline was given the moniker Cleopatra by Napoleon. Napoleon forgave Joséphine despite the fact that he actively sought a divorce. His fear was that he would be abandoned. In addition to this, she stopped having affairs and did her best to win him over. Napoleon, on the other hand, was no longer a man who could be swayed by the influence of a lady. During this time, power was his woman. "My mistresses do not in the least engage my feelings. Power is my mistress." Napoleon. Napoleon divorced because his wife couldn't bear children. In spite of the fact that he loved her, the couple divorced in 1801, demonstrating their commitment to one another. Napoleon bestowed upon Joséphine a lavish residence, as well as a substantial annual income. They continued to have a healthy connection, and it is highly likely that they were still secretly in love with one another. The only thing that ever came between us was my debts, certainly not his manhood. Joséphine after divorcing Napoleon. In 1814, Napoleon was banished to the little island of Elba, which is located close to the coast of France. During the same year, Joséphine passed away. When Napoleon learned of Joséphine's passing, he was so grieved that he locked himself in his room and remained there for 2 days without consuming any food or water. Napoleon passed away in exile on the island of St. Helena, which is located in the Atlantic Ocean, in the year 1821. Joséphine, whom he cherished, was the focus of his final thoughts. France, l'armée, tête d'armée, Joséphine, Napoleon's last words. Napoleon fathered his first child with his sister's maid. In the year 1805, Napoleon had a chance encounter with Éléonore de la Plaine, who was 18 years old at the time. Caroline, his sister, employed her as a servant, and she was also a mistress to Caroline's husband. It was widely believed that Napoleon was infertile due to the fact that his marriage to Joséphine did not result in any offspring, whereas Joséphine already had 2 children from a prior experience. Napoleon had sexual relations with Éléonore in the year 1806, testing the rumor. Éléonore gave birth to Napoleon's son, Leon, on December 13, 1806, which was less than a year after the birth of Napoleon. Napoleon had numerous mistresses all over Europe. Despite the fact that historians counted at least 21 mistresses, Napoleon claimed to have only 7 of them. He had sexual encounters with some of the most stunning women in all of Europe. Let's have a look at the 2 women that are considered to be his sweethearts. Marie Walewska, a stunning Polish countess, was the object of Napoleon's sexual attraction. Close to Warsaw, Poland, in the year 1807, Napoleon came face to face with Countess Marie Walewska, who was waiting in the crowd with keen anticipation to see him. "I have only seen you, I have only admired you, I desire only you," Napoleon to Marie Walewska. Considering that Marie was attempting to safeguard her reputation, the affair was kept a secret. She paid a visit to Napoleon in the late evening and then departed in the wee hours of the morning. Despite this, everyone in the more influential circles was aware of the affair all along. Once he fell in love, Napoleon was completely enamored. In spite of the fact that Marie maintained in her biography that her affair with Napoleon was solely for the sake of rescuing Poland, she, too, fell in love with Napoleon. According to the recollections of Napoleon's acquaintances, during the period, Napoleon exhibited some amazing vigor. Alexandre Joseph was born to Marie on May 4, 1810, and he was named such. Despite the fact that Alexandre was unquestionably Napoleon's son, Marie's old husband, who was in agreement with his wife's affair, acknowledged him as his own. Emily Krauss was even a top-secret mistress of Napoleon's personal life. In the year 1805, when Napoleon arrived in Austria, he ran into Emily Krauss, a stunning young woman who was 20 years old and the adoptive daughter of an Austrian commander. Within a short period of time, he made her his mistress. Through the use of the codename Felix, she accompanied him on a number of military missions while she was dressed as a boy. A great deal of effort was put into concealing her existence. Additionally, she followed Napoleon in Paris. Nevertheless, she was not permitted to reside in the court itself. On May 3, 1810, she gave birth to what would become Napoleon's son, Eugene. The following day, Madame Walewska, Napoleon's Polish mistress, gave birth to their second son, Alexandre, who was named after him. In April of 1810, only 1 month prior, Napoleon had tied the knot with his second wife, the Austrian princess Marie Louise, putting an end to his 5-year affair with Emily. Napoleon's last mistress, Albine de Montholon. The year 1815 saw the beginning of Napoleon's exile on the secluded island of St. Helena. In addition, young Albine de Montholon, a girl who was notorious for having a large number of lovers, was a member of Napoleon's entourage. In spite of the fact that she was accompanied by her third husband, Charles de Montholon, she engaged in a number of affairs, one of which was with Napoleon. She was the mother of 2 of Napoleon's daughters, Helene and Joséphine. Albine gave birth to both of them. As soon as Napoleon found out that Albine was also having an affair with another guy, he ordered her to leave the island. Napoleon married the Austrian princess Marie Louise. When Napoleon was born in 1805, he was crowned Emperor of France. On the other hand, he was confronted with a significant challenge. After a certain point, his wife Josephine was no longer able to have children. In 1810, the pair separated, and Napoleon went on to marry Marie Louise, an Austrian princess who was only 19 years old at the time. At the time of his wedding, Napoleon was not present. The fact that Marie Louise's great-aunt Marie Antoinette was executed by guillotine in France in 1793, and that Napoleon waged multiple military wars against the Austrians, were the primary reasons for Marie Louise's initial feelings of resentment toward Napoleon. In addition to opposing the marriage, she referred to him as an antichrist. "Just seeing him would be the worst form of torture," said Marie Louise about Bonaparte. Napoleon, on the other hand, was able to circumvent her defenses, and she had no trouble falling in love with him. "To a great extent, he loves me. My response to his love is one of sincerity. There is something about him that is really alluring and very eager, and it is impossible to say no to any of these qualities." Marie Louise was a timid and unassuming woman. At home, she was a submissive wife. The passionate and vivacious Josephine was something that Napoleon missed, but he eventually learned to respect Marie Louise. she produced a son for him. Due to the fact that she came dangerously close to passing away during childbirth, Napoleon made a pledge to her that he would never ask her to give birth to another heir. "Never a lie, never a debt," said Napoleon about Marie-Louise. In the year 1814, following Napoleon's exile to Elba, Marie-Louise and their son, Napoleon II, made their way back towards Vienna. It was forbidden for Marie to pay a visit to Napoleon by her father. Napoleon had sex with opera and theater stars. There is no doubt that Napoleon stands out as one of the most famous figures of the 19th century. As a result, he had the opportunity to meet a large number of other prominent people. It goes without saying that his position and fame allowed a great number of well-known opera and theater performers to have access to his bedroom. Opera singers Caroline Branchou and Joséphine Grassini. Caroline Branchou was a French soprano who spent her career at the Paris Opera from 1778 until 1850. In the year 1802, she became Napoleon's romantic partner. In return, Napoleon sped up her career and also made arrangements for her to receive a salary of 3,000 francs, which is equivalent to $14,000 in today's currency. Josephine Grassini was an Italian contralto vocalist who lived from 1773 to 1850. In the year 1800, Napoleon met Josephine in Milano, Italy, and he started a romantic relationship with her. The two of them traveled together to Paris, where she also had a performance in an opera. Naughty actresses Marguerite Georges and Joséphine Duchesnois. Both Marguerite Georges and Joséphine Duchesnois were French actresses who were involved in romantic relationships with Napoleon during the years 1802 and 1804. In their day, they were two of the most talented actresses working on stage. Marguerite was first the mistress of Napoleon's brother, Lucien, before she had an affair with Napoleon. Louis XIV was Napoleon's brother. Immediately following Napoleon's defeat in 1814, the vivacious actress began an affair with Duke Wellington, who was Napoleon's most formidable adversary on the battlefields of Europe. Other than the Italian opera singer Josephine Grassi, Marguerite Georges was the only woman who had sexual encounters with both Napoleon and Duke Wellington, who was Napoleon's most hostile adversary. In the event that Josephine never disclosed to the general public who was superior in bed, Margarita was not the subject of this revelation. "The Duke was by far the stronger," said Marguerite Georges, comparing Napoleon and Duke Wellington in bed.
We hope you liked this video. Subscribe to the channel if you're a history addict, and please let us know about what civilization or time period we should talk about. Also, watch another video here.